good afternoon, everybody. If you're here, I suppose that you're interested in some EPSO competitions, isn't that? Yes, the only thing is if you could switch off your microphone so that we could, and obviously you are invited to make comments in the chat, and then obviously I will respond to that. So, as I said, probably you're interested in EPSO competitions, and therefore you came in order to see how these competitions happen, or what are the stages of the competition, and hopefully to find out that I could help you and support you and accompany you throughout the process of EPSO competition. Now, let me get people in. Right, so having said so, I would probably start with just one or two words about who I am. So my name is Carmen Peter, and I am an executive coach working with the European institutions, and for the last 20 years, specifically in the EPSO preparation. Before that, so I have 30 years experience in coaching, executive coaching, still with the European institutions and international companies. Now, there are two, let's say, directions. One is the preparation for the selection processes. EPSO is one of them, but it could be as well a selection process in UN or in the ECB or in the World Bank or whatever international institutions you could imagine, as well selection processes in the big, I say, multinationals or big companies. So all these selection processes I cover, let's call it. And as these processes are very much similar throughout the world today, I would say that I can prepare you for whatever selection process you are in, whether, let's say, in the institutions or elsewhere. So this is one pan of my activities. And the second one is executive coaching, and I will call it executive because it's about the professional life. And therefore, as soon as you are in a certain job, in a certain position, then I coach you in order to do well in that position. And hopefully, if you're interested, to move on into management positions or senior management positions or other responsibilities. So which that pan is taking care of accompanying you in the professional life. So as simple as that, either I accompany you through the selection process and I accompany you through the professional life in, let's say, supporting whatever the progress you decide you want to have. Now, what I would say is that obviously the purpose of today is to get some explanation about how I could accompany you through the selection process of EPSO. That means EPSO competitions, or not necessarily competition, but could be a selection process in order to be on the reserve list for contractual agent, or to be on the on a selection process for middle and senior managers, right? So we have several possibilities in for that you are, let's say, you go through, and then obviously how could I accompany? The first thing simply is that I can write obviously with you or accompany you in the writing of the application form. Now, the application form has three aspects, at least for EPSO. Obviously, the application forms are different in different institutions in the world. EPSO specifically, they want a part which is called, it's like a CV. So then they have a second part, which is the motivation. There are the 4 questions. And then as soon as we are in an 87 competition, or 8 or 9 or higher than that, then there is a talent screener, right? So when we are talking about EPSO selection process, the application form has 3 parts: CV part, motivation part, and then talent screener part. As I said, these are the three parts in which I can accompany you, and hopefully by writing them, let's say, of high quality, you will draw the attention to your file. You will be not necessarily scored, but certainly you will be scored because the talent screener is scored. So it's part of the score in the, at least in the first phase. So this is the one that we are talking about to start with, right? Now, if you have questions, I will say, write them in the chat, and then I will check as we go through, and then I will respond. I would say I don't have more than that to say about the application form. My principle is that once you go in competition and let's say you are serious about the competition, then I would say do the best you can, as high quality as you can, your documents for application. So, and the CV part, and the 4 questions of the motivation, and even more so, more seriously even, the talent screener, right? So we are talking about very serious documents that should be of the highest possible quality, because at the end of the day, you don't know exactly whether or how they are evaluated, or how they are assessed, or how they are scored. So you don't want to take the risk if it's really the competition that you're interested in, which means, let's call it the right competition for you. Then you don't want to be surprised that you are not accepted. And let's say I did have situations like this with clients who came after saying I was not accepted, and I didn't contact you because I thought this is not important. And could you imagine the surprise and the deception, obviously, to not to be accepted in a competition where you're almost sure that, let's say, you're entitled, at least you're entitled to be accepted. So that's why I would say take it very seriously and start your, how do I call the investment in the process from the application starting. Now, the second phase, and obviously the second phase where I could accompany you, is the CBT. Now, here it's I would say, obviously it's a discussion, because sometimes you have CBT up front, sometimes you have CBT later. CBT is computer-based test. So we are talking about verbal, numerical, and abstract, sometimes situational, right? So verbal, numerical, and abstract test, multiple choice questions, and therefore computer-based test, I would say prepare them anyway, because we are talking about taking the risk not to prepare, and then to find yourself, let's say, called to do a CBT, and then 2 weeks or 1 month is not really enough in order to increase your scores. So because of that, I would say, and if again, you are serious about your competitions, your EPSO competitions, but not only EPSOs, because the CBTs, again, as I said, is across the globe in the selection processes. So if you are serious about doing your competition, or even more so, passing your exam, then you should absolutely invest the time and energy for your computer-based test. That means as soon as, even now, tomorrow, you could start practicing the CBT, right? So because of the fact that the CBT needs a long investment, needs a lot of practice. So obviously, in theory, if you work, then you don't have so much time to practice, I would say, probably not the whole day. And then if we consider that after a full-time job, you have probably 1 hour a day when you could practice the CBT, then I would say this is 1 hour a day. And then 1 month is only 30 hours, right? So it's not really a lot. So that is why I said that start the CBT practice as soon as you can. Don't wait for the competition or wait for the fact that you are called and then you go there. No. So now I see here a question if how rigid is the professional experience? Well, I don't know. We cannot know. So the only thing I'm saying is you apply and then you will see. We cannot decide at their place. So this is nothing that we could do about, just applying. So because of that, I would say you just do your best, you apply, and hopefully you have enough, and hopefully you are competitive. But there is nothing that we could decide in advance. Right. So if you cannot prove the experience, I would say that it's very difficult that it will be considered, because at a certain point, when you go for the assessment center, then you have to present the proofs of the employment. And obviously, these are the ones that they will be believed before your words. So yes, you can apply. That's pretty sure. Nevertheless, the proof to be accepted in the assessment center and obviously later depends on the documents you have in order to prove this. So that's, I would say, pretty necessary in order to go further than that, right? So let me continue. So I was saying that the CBT, do practice as soon as you can. And then after CBT, normally we are going into a written test. Now, I see that for the last 3 competition announced yesterday that the CBT, the assessment center will have a case study and a written test. So the written test in the domain of competence. Now we have to make the difference between the two. The case study is a written test. Let's say it's writing a brief normally, this is what they ask, and it's writing a brief for the boss. So you are in the position 87 and you're the specialist that they recruit, and you receive a file on the moment of the exam. And that file has all the elements that you need in order to do a briefing for the boss. And that is the point of this case study. So what you demonstrate during the case study is the fact that you can understand the documents, obviously under a very high pressure of time. And by understanding the documents, you could make sense of these documents, and then you could organize them in a speech, or normally it's a briefing, but could be a report, could be a note to the file, could be a speech. In any case, what I call it is a written product, right? And this is the way to demonstrate your communication, written communication skills, right? And the case study is not in domain of competence. So we can expect whatever domain, we call them a European issue, and then you receive the file, and then you have to show, I would say, the ability the ability to read, comprehend, understand, organize, and communicate, but not substance knowledge, not domain knowledge. Good. So that is the case study. Now, I saw that for these competitions, they put written test in the domain of competence, right? So in that case, we don't know yet how they will play it, but we could have 2 options. Either you receive a file, so you have to process it on the spot. I call it simulate a task, right, on the spot. Or it might be that you do not receive a file and you have to react on the spot from the memory to make an essay in the domain of competence. So we don't know yet how they think of playing the written test, In any case, there is no modality or way to influence them. So that is why I would say you have to revise the substance of your domain of expertise, revise it very seriously, because it might be either that you have to execute a task on the spot, or you have to write an essay on the domain of competence, which obviously supposes that you revise very seriously, because you would be asked to present an issue, a situation, or a certain aspect of your domain of competence on the basis of your memory. So we could expect either or during the written test in the domain of competence. So with that, we have I talked about the 2 written tests. Next, you will have oral. Now, the oral, there are again interviews, 3 interviews. And then, obviously, you will have an interview in the domain of competence. We call it field interview. And this is the interview where they will go through your talent screener in theory. And so it's like commenting, discussing, presenting examples of your talent screener. And obviously, this is the moment to show that you are the specialist that you claim you are in the moment of application. So the field interview, it's an interview in the domain of competence. And obviously, the purpose of this interview is to show that you are the specialist that you claimed you are. And then we have 2 general interviews, we call them. One is the CBI, which is computer-based interview. And the other one is the situational interview, right? Now, what is the difference? On the CBI, which is the competence-based interview, it's a general interview, right? So in this general interview, you have to display, in your examples, the 8 EPSO competencies. So obviously the competencies, you have them in the notice of competition, so you will be aware of their definition. But obviously, during the training, we discuss on how you choose your subjects, how you present your subjects, what is the art of presenting, hopefully convincing your jury that you have these competencies. So this is for the competence-based interview. That means the general interview with the EPSO competencies. And then you have another one, which is called situational competence-based interview. So it's a situational interview. And for this situational interview, you receive a file in advance, might be 2 weeks, might be 2 months in advance. And that is a file of a situation at work. So it's a complex situation. You have to chair a meeting and you have to construct compromises between the 6 participants. And so the situational goes through how you're going to prepare that in that meeting so that you're able to obtain the compromise from the participants. So let's call it, an interview where there are different aspects of difficulty. So one difficulty is really understanding the file you receive, which is quite a serious file. So you have to have it quite well, let's say, integrated the information, because you have to act as you are the one handling the file. And secondly, so once is that understanding of the file. And the second difficulty is behavior, because during this situational interview, your jury can go into role play and can ask you, invite you in the role play. So they will go saying, well, I am that financial unit. How would you convince me of that? Or I am the auditor. How would you convince me of the other one? Makes sense? So the difficulty in this interview is that you have to play a role and you have to convince your jury that you're able to handle, let's say, quite a tense situation, quite a challenging situation, and on the substance and on the behavior side of it. So these are. Now, in order to recap from the top to the end, so, and is that you start with writing the application form, right? Application form, CV, and talent screener, and the motivation part. So these are the three documents that EPSO demands to apply: CV, motivation, and talent screener. And obviously, as I said, do them as the best quality possible. Next phase might be CBT, whether it's sooner or later. In theory, there is a CBT somewhere. That means computer-based test. That means verbal, numerical, and abstract. And as I said, practice starting from today. There is a need to practice. There is a need to get your scores as high as you can. 90% will be not bad or quite good if you could get that. Now we go to the assessment center. The assessment center might start with, probably separate from the assessment center or inside the assessment center. It doesn't really matter. In any case, you cannot influence that decision. Is a case study, which is writing a briefing to the boss, let's say, based on the file you receive. So that is the case study test. And then there is a written test. For the moment, we don't know more about it, but it might be either a simulation of the task on the spot or an essay in the domain of competence. So this is the written test in the domain of competence. Then we are talking about the field interview, where you go, you present your professional life, and obviously as much as you can, you try to convince people that you are the specialist in that domain. And then you have a general interview where you demonstrate that you have the 8 EPSO competencies, and obviously you display them through the examples. And then the last is the situational competence-based interview, where based on the file that you receive in advance, 2 weeks in advance at least, then you have to prepare the file and you have to play a role in that interview as the jury will provoke you, will invite you to do the role on the spot during this interview. Are there supports? So the question is, do you have tests as a member of the group? No. The group exercise that we had it for years was now replaced, let's say thanks to COVID, because of COVID, it was replaced with the situational competence-based interview. So situational competence-based interview, in fact, replaces the group exercise, and therefore you don't have group exercise anymore, but you have this situational, which is a role play, and let's say it goes quite close to the group exercise that we used to prepare to have before. So all that to say, I think that I would say I clarify the EPSO process. And then, as we said, I accompany my clients from the first application, let's say drafting, until the end of the process to when they are in the reserve list and beyond the reserve list, because beyond the reserve list then starts the coaching in the professional life. And on the website carmenpeter.eu, you will find all the trainings. We just announced the training for the month of June. And then you have in the month of June all the training that I mentioned now during the presentation. And therefore, let's call it, you can obviously join me for these trainings or go for a personal individual session, and whatever you think is best for you. Now, Vanessa asked me if there is a general calendar. We don't know. And now, especially since COVID, a lot of exams have really are delayed. So the only thing you could do is to stay attuned to how to say that, they will announce, but I would say expect that a whole process will take 1 year. I would say this is a minimum that we could have, kind of a year. So be sure that you keep, you stay attuned with your EPSO account because they will communicate. But let's say consider that it's a 1 year process. This is what happened. So yes, the month of June will be, the whole month is midsummer promotion. So all the trainings are 100 euros per training. So I think that's quite a good offer. So I hope that I see you soon for the trainings starting already this weekend, if not in June. So thank you very much, and then hope to see you soon in the training.